Today's tutorial is for the brand new pattern from Hollow Bag Creations. This is the Bat Company wallet. This pattern is still in testing, and so I cut out my tester and was starting to interface everything, and I thought, you know what, this looks super fun. I think I just want to do a video on it. I love Hollow Bag Creations patterns. They're very well developed. Every little step, every little consideration is taken. It almost reads like a book because it is so informative. It gives you everything you need, and it's written in a way that's kind of as a friend would tell you a pattern. Sometimes you might look at the pattern and see all the pages and you might get a little overwhelmed, but I promise it's just because she holds your hand through every part of it. Nikki is a wonderful designer, and so I'm very excited to go through this. So let's just go ahead and get started sewing a wallet. The first thing that Nikki has us sew is the flaps. We're going to have two flaps, a front flap and a back flap. These are the pieces that we're going to be using. Now, she does recommend using vinyl. I'm using a cotton woven. I will be attaching a heavy stabilizer after this is sewn together. It helped me to lay these out so that I could actually understand the way that they're going to come together. We're going to have a straight edge across here. This is going to be our lining piece that would be sewn right sides together. This is going to be the back flap that we're sewing first. Let's start with our C1 and our C2 piece. The designer tells us to make a small mark on the inside edge. It tells you the exact measurements. On this middle piece, there's two inside pieces that we need to mark. So we have those marks all along the top. That tells us where to match these up. So have your C1 piece right sides up. Your mark should be right here on the inside. Your C2 piece is going to be flipping and going on top of it, but we can't just lay it like this, of course. So we have to match up those two top marks. Here's the mark that we are matching here, and have those seams in line here. We're not going to be able to clip all around here. What we're going to do is manipulate this material whenever we're sewing it. But if we match those two pieces up and we kind of roll them together and let them curve, we could see that we can get them to match up, and we're going to have to be manipulating this material the entire time we're sewing it through the machine. So we're not going to be able to just clip and do it. We're going to have to sew and then roll it together to get that nice curve. So let's take it under the machine, matching up those two marks, and let's start sewing this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. I'm back stitching when I start, and I'm just going a few stitches. This part's in line, that's where my needle is. Once my needle gets past that part, that's when I'll start manipulating. I'm going to pull it in just a little bit, keeping these in line. Take another stitch to keep that proper seam allowance. Do it again. You're going to slowly be coming in here, curving this. The C1 piece will be curving back. The C2 piece will be curving slightly forward. So this is what it looks like once it's sewn. You can see it's kind of curved up. It's not laying straight, and you're thinking, oh gosh, this is going to look horrible. We should have this point at the top. At the bottom, you don't have to match up perfectly, but you should match up pretty close. When you open it up, what you really want to try to see is kind of a straight line forming here. So let's pull out that C3, the other piece for this flap. You can see it's going to go like this, so we're going to again match up these two marks. I'm going to clip those together. So not only do we match up those marks, but we make sure these curves start together. I need to be able to sew them together. Yes, the rest of it's not going to match just yet. We'll get there, but we start with those curves matching so we can start sewing. So let's do this again. Back stitch really well. We are coming down that seam allowance. We're going to push and pull these to keep them in line. Pushing the one on the bottom, pulling the one on the top. Don't forget, even though you're going to the bottom, to keep matching up that seam allowance. Back stitch. Open that up. And there we have that. This is the back piece. We have this back exterior piece going. We have a decently straight line there across the top. This is what we want to see. Now, I'm going to do the same thing with the front pieces, which is C4, C5, and C6. I'm also going to flatten these seams. I'm going to butterfly them open. If you're using vinyl, Nikki suggests that you butterfly them and use double-sided tape. Since I'm not using vinyl, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my iron to press them flat, and I'll actually use a glue stick, just a school glue stick. I'll run along the side and then I'll iron them flat to get that glue to kind of fix. It doesn't need to be a permanent fix this. We just want to get these seams pressed open. After I have both of these seams butterflied, laying flat, I'm going to pull out a piece of foam and I'm going to fuse, because my foam is fusible with the heat press, this piece onto a piece of foam. I'll cut my foam bigger and then I will trim around the foam. That will be my next step. So I have both of the flaps sewn together with the seams pressed open and attached to foam. Now what I'm going to do is each one of these seams, I'm going to top stitch down both sides. So I'll do my top stitching 1/8 of an inch away, and then after that we'll be ready to add the lining. I am going to repeat the same steps on this one, and then I'm going to draw on the seam allowance to this piece, and when I come back we will sew the exteriors and the linings together. Now it's time to finish up the front and the back. We're going to do both of them the same way. I'm going to be working on the back one first, and then I'll do the front off camera. What you do is you take your lining piece and you're just going to place it right sides together. The pattern gives you the measurements for the magnet, but just note that the pattern does not recommend you install the magnet until after you have sewed this together. So I'm placing them right sides together, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew for my exterior, because that's where I have the seam allowance drawn on, especially in the points and pivot areas. And I'm going to sew from the top side all the way through this bottom up the other side. I'm going to leave this top open so that I can turn it that way. I'll also, after I sew it, that's also when I'll install that magnet. So I have these sides sewn together. I'm going to trim up these edges and the overhang. I will go off camera to install the magnet on my lining piece, and then I'm going to turn this right sides out. I'll come back and we can top stitch it together. I have these sewn together. I have them turned out. I have a couple clips just to compress a little bit to get a really nice top stitch around here. I did go ahead and install my magnetic snaps, although the pattern does say to top stitch first. I'm going to hit it now, and I'll just be really careful whenever I'm top stitching around those magnets. I'm also going to close up the top, and then this will have our flaps ready, so we'll put those aside until we're to the next step where we need them again. Go ahead and complete those same steps for the other one, and then set your flaps aside. I have pulled out my main exterior piece, a piece of number 5 zipper tape, zipper pull, and the zipper pocket lining piece. Both of these pieces are cotton woven. On the back of the zipper pocket lining piece, I just have an SF101. On the back of this main exterior, I do have a Decaville Heavy. I have the Decaville Heavy, the box cut out for the zipper. This is a pattern piece. You don't have to do any measuring. I also drew on the box for which we are going to sew on the zipper. So the way we do this is we have our exterior right sides up. We place this zipper pocket lining piece right sides down, so the right sides together. We center it along the sides, and then we have the edges together along the top. Now all I have to do is sew directly on this box. You should not have to sew through the Decaville Heavy if you have everything cut properly. After you sew on the box, you are just going to cut a line down the middle. We always angle that with an inverted triangle on the end. You can see a picture of that in the pattern. And then I will just push my lining through that opening. I sewed around the box, I pushed the lining through the opening, and then I used my iron to press it flat. And so now what I need to do is I need to add the zipper. What I like to do is I like to just put the zipper teeth in the center of this box and then just sew around it. And that way I can adjust if I see it shifting or anything like that. This is the way we have the lining looking. It's all open and everything is ready to be sewn there. I do have the zipper pull on the zipper. I'm just going to center my zipper tape. I have mine cut slightly bigger than necessary just to make sure I have plenty of room. So once I know that I have the zipper teeth in the middle of the box, I'm just going to start stitching all the way around this box with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from that sewn folded edge. Once you have that zipper installed, what you're going to do is you're going to flip to the back and you're going to pull your lining up so that it matches the top here, and then we are going to sew around there to close up this zipper. We're going to match up this top edge, add some clips here. We will sew up one side across the top and then down this other side. I like to sew this from the exterior, so I'll just add some clips here looking at the lining side, but then I'll flip it over and then I'll just sew it from the exterior side. I'm going to trim up the overhang here at the top and then the zipper tape on the sides, and then this piece is done until its next step. I forgot to mention that you need to also add the magnetic snaps to the bottom of your exterior, so don't forget to do that. The next thing I want to work on is the ID slot. Now I'm doing this simplified version. She has an amazing template for a bat cutout, but I just didn't feel confident enough to do that. She walks you through each step, so if you are someone that feels a little bit more brave or a little bit more confident, you can try that out, but I'm just going to do the basic square. So this is the way my piece looks. This piece needs to be a non-fraying or more non-fraying than a woven. I'm choosing to use a waterproof canvas, and then this can be a clear vinyl. I'm choosing to use a piece of jelly, and this is from the Emporium also. After you have this cut out, you are going to fold this together, wrong sides together, matching up the bottom and the sides. After I get that clip together, I'm just going to slip this piece of jelly or your clear vinyl just inside there. And then we're going to top stitch around these squares, the cutouts. You'll top stitch around them. You can back stitch or you can pull your threads and tie them in the middle of this so you don't see them, whichever you feel like doing. I'm just having that jelly evenly distributed on both sides. Once you get that secured, I'm just going to top stitch around here. If you're someone who likes to use double-sided tape, that could be something you could do, but I'll just kind of hold it and make sure things aren't slipping too much and keep everything in line while I stitch about 1/8 of an inch around the perimeter of both of these windows. Now that I've top stitched around both windows, I'm just going to go ahead and top stitch across the top of that to finish that top edge. Pull out your slip pocket one piece. Take the ID pocket that we just made and you're going to place it there on the bottom. Once you line up the sides and the bottom, go ahead and top stitch down the middle of this in between the two ID windows. That's just going to secure these two pieces together, but still give you individual slots for your IDs. Now at this point, we are going to fold the slip pocket wrong sides together. Once you have these folded wrong sides together, you can go ahead and top stitch across the top of the slip pocket one, and then you can baste along the sides and bottom if you want to, but this will be attached to another piece in a minute if you don't feel like doing that. Here's how that slip pocket looks. I'm going to set it aside and start working on the credit card slots. Now it's time to start working on these credit card slots. I'm going to be doing version 1, but there is a version 2 option. The version 1 will have slightly more bulk on it, but I do feel like it's going to be the more traditional, better looking version. I don't know, I could be wrong on that, but I'm going to attempt version 1. I will be doing on a domestic machine, so you get a pretty good idea of if your machine could handle it. I will be using all cotton woven on mine without interfacing on any piece. So for the version 1, you're going to have 2 different measurement of cuts to do. Version 1 has a credit card slot 1 piece, and you'll cut out 7 of these pieces. Then you'll also have to cut out 3 of this other size. For the 7 pieces, what you're going to do is you're just going to take these and you are going to fold them wrong sides together, matching up that long edge. You can just clip them in place, or if you're using cotton woven like me, you could even take them over the iron and press them flat. You will do that for all 7, and then you're going to top stitch across the top. For these other 3 though, what you're going to do is the pattern gives you a measurement that you're going to draw from the bottom. You're going to draw that measurement, and then she says you can use double-sided tape if you want. I'm going to use a glue stick just like I typically do. You are going to fold this top edge down to that line, and then you're going to fold this bottom edge up. So you won't be able to see any of the wrong side of this credit card slot piece. This will be, the part where we have folded will be considered the bottom. So for these 3, we will also top stitch along that top edge. I'm going to do all this prep off camera just so I'm not making this video too long, and when I come back I'll show you these already completed. I have all of the credit card slots top stitched. I want to talk a little bit about them. We have 7 of these card slots that you would call a raw edge or just a typical card slot, and then we have 3 that we want to call a folded edge. So 3 of those, 7 of the others. Then she tells us to put them in groups. In the first group, we're going to have 3 of those typical raw edge card slots, 1 of the folded edge card slot, the folded bottom. Then the second group, we're going to have 3 more of the raw edge card slots and another 1 of the folded bottom edge. So these 2 are the exact same groups. That last group will just have 1 of each. 1 regular card slot raw edge and then 1 folded bottom. These are going to be referred to as our credit card slots. These 2 are going to end up being slip pockets. When we define them like this, it'll kind of help us to understand what we're doing. So now we're going to start attaching the credit card slots to the lining pieces. I'm going to set this other stack, those 2, I'm going to set them aside. I'm going to pull out one of my lining pieces. Just as a note, your lining piece, there is one side that is longer than the other side. They are very similar in size, so for me what I did was I got out the ruler and I just made for sure I had the right size that I was attaching these to. We start at the top and the pattern gives us a measurement as to how far down we measure. I made marks there. You could use clips, you could just use your ruler. I'm just not using a ruler on camera. We're going to take one of the raw edge credit card slots, just the regular slot that's just folded in half. We are going to place that top stitched edge, your top edge, directly on that line or on that measurement. That is your first credit card slot. What you're going to do is you're going to stitch all along the bottom at 1/8 of an inch. That's going to secure that credit card slot to this lining piece. We just sewed the bottom. You can see the top is still unsewn. That's the way we're leaving it right now. We're going to grab a second one of those raw edge pieces. And this time you're going to measure down from this folded edge of the top one. The pattern tells us how far down we're going to measure. I'm not going to get the ruler out on camera, but I'm going to get that placed, and then I'm going to stitch along the bottom of this one. Then I'm going to come in with that same measurement, grab the last raw edge credit card slot in that group. We'll only have the folded edge left, and I'm going to place it and sew along the bottom of this one as well. So all three of these will be sewn 1/8 of an inch away from the bottom edge, and they will all be evenly spaced. I'm going to do that step off camera, and then I will repeat those same steps with this group on the other lining piece. So when I come back, I will have 2 lining pieces with credit card slots on them, and then from the first 2 groups, I'll just have the folded edge credit card slots left. Here's both my lining pieces. I have 3 of the raw edge credit card slots attached at the bottoms. We still have these 2 folded edge pieces that we need to attach as well. And it's going to be the exact same measurement, so they'll all be even to look at. You're going to sew across the bottom, and that will be a top stitch because it will be seen from the inside of your wallet, so take care that you do a good stitch there. The pattern tells us that we can get a piece of elastic. She gives you the measurement and the size, and you can fold it and put it underneath here for a pin loop. I'm not going to do that step, but I did want to mention it just in case you want to add that option onto yours. You'll take the other folded edge credit card slot piece and you'll do the exact same thing. This is how we'll finish these up. Then after we have these top stitched, then what we'll do is we'll find the center of these credit card slots, and I like to sew from the bottom going up to sew that line just to make sure we have 2 separate sections for the credit card slots. After that, I'm going to baste on the sides just to have everything one piece and basted and so it's secure. This is how the first side looks. I'm going to repeat those same steps for the other side and have both of these lining pieces with the credit card slots attached. If you attached elastic to one of the pieces, pull the piece out with the elastic. Take out those 2 remaining, and we are going to attach the raw edge or the one open at the bottom first. The pattern tells us a mark to make that we are going to measure from the bottom. Then they tell us to place the top on that line. So your opening will be facing away from the other credit card slots. The bottoms will be together. Once you have that placed, you're going to sew along that bottom edge just like you did previously, 1/8 of an inch away. After we do that, we're going to come in with this folded bottom edge and place it just like we did before. The pattern tells us the measurement of how far down. Again, that top, that opening will be away from the other ones. The bottom will be closest to the bottom of these credit card slots. Go ahead and sew across that one, which will end up being a top stitch. I'm going to go ahead and do both of these now and finish up this side of the lining. These bottom 2 are designed to be slip pockets. If you wanted more credit card slots, you could always sew down the middle of these, but I'm going to leave mine open like the pattern says. I'm going to set this lining piece aside, pull out this other one, and let's go ahead and pull out that ID pocket. On this one, I'm going to place the bottom edge against the bottom of the lining. These openings are going to be the same way. They're going to be facing these slots, so the openings will all be going in the same way on this side. And then you're just going to baste around this piece to attach it to this lining. At this point, what you're going to do is you're going to take these two pieces and you're going to trim them down to the measurements given in the pattern. So I trimmed these linings up to the measurement given in the pattern, and whenever the designer tells you there's no need to baste, you just need to listen to him because I trimmed off all my basting stitches. It's okay. We are going to sew the sides on right now, so it's not even a problem. So we have 4 of these little trim pieces, and then we have 2 of this other measurement of trim pieces. These 2 are going to go on the bottom. These 4 are going to go on the sides. All we do is we simply place them on each side. If yours is directional, make sure you have it going the correct direction. Mine is not. So 1 on each side. And I'm sewing down on these credit card slots. It is very important for me to not cause any shifting. I want these to stay looking nice. We've put in a lot of effort here, so let's not mess up here at the end. Go slow. Hold your hands there to hold the credit cards down with your hands and go slow just to make for sure you're not letting the foot kind of push them or get them to shift any whenever you're sewing across them. Now let's take this trim piece and let's just fold it over. We are not moving the seam allowance. The seam is going to stay up, and we're just pressing this trim down. And we are going to top stitch on this trim. You may want to make for sure that your credit card slots have not shifted and they still look really nice. But I'm just going to kind of do a slight tug and to have a really nice top stitch 1/8 of an inch away. We're going to do those same steps on the other 3 sides. Then I'll come back and we'll attach the bottoms. Let's go ahead and grab one of those lining pieces. We have the sides attached. Now we just need to attach a bottom piece. Place it right sides together. It should match up if you have it trimmed down the way the pattern tells us to. And let's sew across here with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Let's go ahead and flip the trim piece down, leaving the seam allowance up. We are going to be sewing through both the trim and the seam allowance. Here is both of my lining pieces. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the exterior piece, and we are going to attach the flaps. We are going to attach one of the flaps to this piece, which is the lining piece too. So I'll set this one aside. You're going to lay your front flap onto the top of this lining piece. It's going to be centered, and on this one the magnetic snap will be against the lining. You can go ahead and clip that and then baste it in place. I'm going to also pull out my exterior and also make sure you have your magnetic snaps on everything. And I'm also going to go ahead and add the back snap to the exterior piece. So for this one, we'll lay it right sides together, so we will have it centered, but we will be looking at the snap on this one. The last step we need to do with these linings is we're going to put them right sides together and sew. This is our bottom, the trim, so we are going to be sewing the sides and the top. First thing we do is we place them right sides together, matching everything up. Then the pattern gives us exact measurements as to where to start sewing at the side. We'll start sewing here, go all the way up to the top, go across, keeping that flap tucked in, then go down the side to the other measurement given. Now that we have this sewn together, the only thing we're going to do is we're going to trim here at the corners just to reduce some bulk. I'm going to trim at an angle just to get rid of some of that, but everything else I'll leave alone. Now I'm going to reach in through the bottom, flip this right sides out. I'll take the time to poke out the corners, and the designer says that it is best to take the time to use some really strong clips to compress those seams, just so you can kind of flatten them out. Where I'm working with all woven, mine won't be quite as hard. If you are working with a waterproof canvas or something like that, you would definitely need to probably press yours a little bit more. Now that I have those corners poked out, I'm just going to top stitch across this top, keeping my flap lifted up. We have the two pieces right now, the exterior and then the lining. The pattern tells us the next step is to, on the exterior and the piece of the lining with the ID slots, fold it under. The pattern tells you how far you'll fold it under, but you'll just fold that raw edge down. She said you can use double-sided tape, glue, clips, whatever you want, but you need to secure it a little bit with something besides just clips in case they pop off while you're sewing it. So I have glue and clips on mine. I could probably take the clips off, but I'm leaving it on there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to match up these bottom edges, right sides together. I'm going to start removing the clips so that I can clip them together and hold them as one. So I have these clipped together now, and you can see they're flush. And this is what we're looking at. Here's that other piece of the lining that's free. Here's the other side of the exterior. Now what we need to do is we need to attach this exterior to this lining, but only up to the point where we stopped sewing earlier. So it's going to be a little bit tricky, she says. We're going to sew this with the lining right sides up. We're going to start at the bottom here and start sewing towards this line or this row of stitching. She says to use your hemostats to kind of pull this down and get as close as we can to that previous row of stitching. We do not want to go over the row of stitching, so at no point are we sewing over the previous row of stitching, so we're just going up to it. I'll use my hemostats to kind of pull that material flat so I can get as close as possible. I'm going to do that on both sides, making sure I back stitch when I start and stop really well. So I sewed these two edges along here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this flap and I'm actually going to push it through this opening here. So I'm going to have to remove my clips, start slowly tucking that through, and she tells us we're going to have this laying as flat as possible. So after you pull that lining through, it's going to be up against the exterior at the bottom along that folded edge. Here's the rest of that lining piece. Here is the exterior for the top. Let me just show you one more time so you can see what you're looking at there, because it's a little tricky. So here is the exterior piece, here is the lining piece. They're still right sides together. I just pulled that flap all the way through the bottom. I still have these two edges that are unsewn. I'm going to put them right sides together and I'm going to sew them. We are again going to sew to that mark, that area that we've already sewn, so that it kind of matches up. This time though, we'll start at one end, sew all the way around to finish up those last few edges. Again, it's going to be a little tricky. We'll have to use our hemostats to kind of pull this in place a little. So I'm going to go ahead and start clipping on the sides, clip all the way up to the top, and then clip around, and then we will sew it together with that seam allowance given the pattern. So I have these two edges clipped together. I'm going to use my hemostats to pull this fabric that's kind of bunched up there and to pull it over so I can sew it all the way around here. If you're having trouble sewing from this lining side, you could sew from the exterior side, whatever works best for you. I'm going to try to sew from this lining side because I really feel like it'd be hard to pull the fabric over to be able to see it clearly. It will be a little bit awkward to go, like you'll want to shift it around the other way. So if you wanted to do like I did, so what I did was I put it under my needle and I took a few stitches forward, and then I pivoted the entire thing and sewed towards this edge here. It's a little tricky because that means I have to hold my hemostats with my left hand, and I'm right-handed, and kind of pull that way, but it does work, and that is the best way I found to do it. Definitely do it however you feel most comfortable with. So now what we need to do is we need to trim down these corners so that when we turn it right sides out, we'll have a little less bulk in there and be able to get a better finish. I'm going to trim down a little bit of this extra foam too. I kind of beveling that edge, but actually not cutting into the lining part, just the foam. Let's go ahead and start slowly birthing this out. We have everything turned right sides out. We need to do some top stitching now. Before we do that though, we need to make 2 marks on each side. That means we'll have 4 in total. The pattern tells you the marks you'll make, and you're going to measure from the bottom towards the center or the top towards the center. Then what we're going to do is we are going to top stitch around the bottom set of marks, having these credit card slots up to the top. Once we do the bottom set and it closes this opening, then we will flip this credit card piece down and then do the same thing to top stitch around the top. After that, we will use those 2 sets of marks to sew across, just to have everything laying nice and flat. So I'm going to be sewing on camera, but I'm not going to show myself making the marks because I don't want a ruler on camera, but I'm going to come back once I have the marks made and you will see me sewing all the top stitching on this wallet to finish everything up. I'm using clips to mark where I need to start and stop just because I want to make sure it's removable and I don't want to risk having anything left over if I can't get it to come off. I do have those extra slots pulled to the top and I'm going to start sewing here, go all the way around to the other side. I'm just going to do that top stitching about 1/8 of an inch away. I'm going to do that same row of top stitching down at the bottom and making sure I move that flap of credit card slots towards the bottom now, and I'm going to keep my flap up. I'm going to also make sure I kind of press down this zipper pocket really nice before I top stitch across it. At this point, I'm supposed to sew 2 rows of top stitching across the bottom. I'm tired. This wallet has been quite the adventure. I struggled at several parts of it, just getting it pulled together, just because there's a lot of steps. There is a total of 60 some pages, 100 and some steps. It is a work of art you're putting into this. So top stitching around here, I'm like, hey, I've got this pattern pretty good. Everything works on it. I'm not risking anything else. Everything's closed up. Everything's uniform. I'm going to skip it. You can definitely do it. It's not hard. The pattern shows you just sewing across there, but I'm going to skip it. I definitely will have to put some clips in place. I'll probably just flatten this under a book to kind of get some weight on it. No problems at all, really, basically sewing it the way I did it. I can't imagine sewing this on a domestic machine in all vinyl. I think I would have had a hard time. Sewing it with cotton woven, I had no problems doing that. That made it a lot more enjoyable. I'm really surprised that I pulled it off. I mean, look at that. I really did it. I pulled it off. I pulled this wallet off. I mean, look at the credit card slots. So let's just look at it. We have these credit card slots. We have 2 ID slots. We have a slip pocket back here. We flip it down, more credit card slots, 2 slip pockets, a zipper pocket on the back. This is the most advanced wallet I've ever made, honestly, but it wasn't hard. I can't say that it is hard. I can say that you have to put in some effort. The pieces, cutting them out, wasn't hard. I didn't feel like I had hundreds of pieces. I felt like all the materials you needed are readily available, so nothing really super tricky. I do think my magnetic snaps, I would have preferred to have had riveted snaps, so I could go ahead and add these snaps here at the bottom, but at the end add the snaps to the flap, because I feel like my snaps, like this is supposed to sit down a little bit. That's the way she wanted it, but I feel like mine's a little too low, And so you can see how it's kind of stepped there. That's the design. But I feel like mine's a little too stepped down. Just a personal thought on that. I would have rather had my magnetic snap over here so that it could have fit a little more like this. And so I have, and that's not anything with the pattern's magnetic snap placement. It's just because you're doing so much construction, occasionally you're going to get a little off. But I think this would have looked better. But that means, if you can see right here, my magnetic snap doesn't hit. So I have to have mine a little bit over like that. Still an amazing, amazing job I did on this. I'm going to give myself the credit and the praise on pulling this off because it is a little challenging. This is my first time sewing it, and I'm not at all sad at the job I did. Amazing pattern. Nikki Rott's amazing patterns. Enjoy this pattern. Really sink in and have fun with it. You will not be sad that you did this. You will be so proud of yourself, just like I am. You're creating something that is one of a kind, that is amazing. How many people do you know in the real world? I know we know them all on YouTube and on Facebook and all that, but how many people do we know in real life that can say they sewed a bat wing wallet? This wallet is pretty cool. So I am thoroughly impressed. I am thoroughly pleased. Another amazing pattern from Hollowbag Creations. I will have the link for this in the description. Also, this amazing fabric is from the Emporium. Zipper tape is from Mormino. It's retail right now. And the jelly is also from the Emporium. I'm pretty sure she has retail of it, but I could be wrong. But I'm thinking she does. I think it's her perfect pink. And then the other fabrics are just ones that I had in my stash already. So today in your sewing room, I hope you sew something that's a little hard, that's a little tricky, that makes you stop and like, okay, what am I doing next? And so that way when you finish it, you're like, wow, I did it. I persevered through it. I stuck to it. And I'm proud of myself because I just made something amazing. And then go have some chocolate and a piece of cake. I mean, do something just relaxing because you earned it. What a wonderful pattern. Thank you, Nikki, for the experience. Thank you for letting me create this tutorial. Thank you for letting me test this pattern. I love everything you do. I can't wait to sew another pattern from you and see what your amazing mind comes up with next. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.